Welcome to Deep Treks. I'm Dan Shipton, and this is our Thursday edition of Deep Treks as we have been studying about Peter this week. We talked a couple of days about how Peter was challenging Jesus, how he continued to challenge Jesus in his walk and in his following. So today we are going to continue on that route, and today we're going to get to the point of where Jesus and Peter kind of have this confrontation on the night that Jesus is betrayed. And I want us to just go over, and we're going to look in Mark chapter 14 as we begin our study. And we're going to see the first encounter because there's actually two encounters that happen on the night that Jesus was betrayed. In verse 26 of chapter 14 of Mark, it says, "And when they had sung a hymn, they went out to the Mount of Olives. And Jesus said to them, 'You will all fall away, for it is written, I will strike the shepherd, and the sheep will be scattered. But after I am raised up, I will go before you to Galilee.' Peter said to him, 'Even though they all fall away, I will not.' And Jesus said to him, 'Truly I tell you, this very night, before the rooster crows twice, you will deny me 3 times.' But he said emphatically, 'If I must die, I will not deny you.' And they all said the same thing." Peter led the others, basically telling them, "Hey, we're not going to deny Christ. We're going to hold you up, Jesus." Well, let's continue on because this is the first encounter. Now, he says he's going to deny them, and Peter says, "No, I'm not." But then they go out into Gethsemane, out into the garden. It says, "And they went to a place called Gethsemane, and he said to his disciples, 'Sit here while I pray.' And he took with him Peter, James, and John, and began to be greatly distressed and troubled. He said to them, 'My soul is sorrowful even unto death. Remain here and watch.' And going a little further, he fell on the ground and prayed that if it were possible, that the hour might pass from him. And he said, 'Abba, Father, all things are possible for you. Remove this cup from me. Yet not what I will, but you will.' And he came and found them sleeping. And he said to Peter, 'Simon, are you asleep? Could you not watch 1 hour with me? Watch and pray that you may not enter into temptation. The spirit indeed is willing, but the flesh is weak.' He went away and prayed again, saying the same words. And he again came and found them sleeping, for their eyes were very heavy. And they did not know what to answer him. And he came a third time and said to them, 'Are you still sleeping and taking your rest? Isn't it enough that the hour has come and the Son of Man is being betrayed into the hands of sinners? Rise, let us be going. See, my betrayer is at hand.'" Jesus is basically challenging Peter in this last part here of his life before he goes to the cross. And he's challenging Peter. And Peter is all fired up at first. I'm never going to deny you. I'm going to keep with you. I'm going to walk with you. How many of us do things like that with Jesus? We go to a service or we go to a meeting or we go somewhere, we get all fired up and I'm going to give all this money or I'm going to do all this thing and I'm going to do all these good things for Jesus. But we kind of peter out later on. We kind of fall away later on. And here he says all these words, and Jesus says, "No, you're going to deny me." He turns around and goes into the garden. They start praying, and he says, "Stay awake, stay on guard." Jesus comes back after praying and finds them asleep 3 times. 3 times he finds them asleep. And over, he's like, "Hey, the spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. Peter, you can't even stay awake with me." We get all fired up, and maybe there's times we kind of fall away. We get tired, and we aren't doing the things we should be doing. And so we need to get back on track. We're going to go over and look at another passage that kind of finishes this out in Matthew chapter 26. So let's pull that up. Matthew 26. And once I get this pulled up here, I'm looking for the scriptures right now, and I'm going to pull this up, and here we go. So let me, for those of you that are following on the feeds where you can see, we are looking in Matthew chapter 26, and we are looking at this passage. This is where Jesus is telling him at the Mount of Olives that you are going to betray me. You're going to fall away before this night is over. And then they go to Gethsemane, and he's in there. And as he's before Caiaphas later on in this chapter, he's having this long discussion. We go clear down to verse 29, and it says, Peter was sitting out in the courtyard, and a servant girl came up to him and said, You were also with Jesus the Galilean. But he denied it before them all, saying, I don't know what you mean. And when he went out of the entrance, another servant girl saw him, and she said to the bystanders, This man was with Jesus of Nazareth. And again he denied it with an oath. I don't know this man. And after a little while, the bystanders came up to him and said to Peter, Certainly, you too are one of them, for your accent betrays you. In other words, they knew he was from Galilee. And then he began to invoke curses upon himself and to swear, I do not know the man. And immediately the rooster crowed. This is that famous instance where we all read about this, and we read about it, and it tells us that Jesus told him he was going to betray him. He is put on the spot, and what's amazing to me, this rough, tough Peter, I'm going to go die for you, Jesus, is confronted by a servant girl. And the fact that it says servant girl and not woman tells us this is a younger girl. This is probably somebody under the age of 13, probably 10 to 12 years old, who works in Caiaphas's house. And she says, Surely you're one of them. And to this little girl, Peter says, I don't know him. And then all the people start asking the question. So I think it's amazing how tough and rough Peter is, and yet he denies even knowing Christ in the crisis. What's amazing to me is in the early church, there was a time when they were going through persecution, and after the persecutions were over, they had this big discussion in the early church days. And the discussion was basically whether they should allow people who had denied Christ to save their lives to come back to the church. Could they be restored? And I think they forgot to read the whole story about Peter, because Peter denied Christ at the crucifixion 3 times just to save his own skin, and 2 of them were to girls who were young girls. Some kids along the way. He couldn't even stand up to them and admit that he was a follower of Jesus. So I want to ask you today, have you ever denied Christ? Scripture's pretty clear about this. It says right in there, Jesus tells people, if you deny me, I will deny you before my Father. But yet Peter denies him, and we're going to see tomorrow about the restoration of Peter. It's probably the best part of the story. It's a story because it reminds us that we have hope. Even when we fail Jesus, even when we fall, even when we betray doing the right things he's calling us to do, there's still a hope that we have. And so today I want to challenge you. Maybe you're going through those times in your life where you're saying, I just don't know if I'm in the right place with Christ. I don't feel worthy. I feel like I've betrayed Christ. I feel like I don't uphold him the way I should or give a good representation of him in the world. The truth of the matter is, forgiveness can only come from Christ. And it's not in our power to do anything but to put our faith in him. That's all Peter had to do. And that was the point Jesus was trying to make. God has a bigger plan. God has a better plan. And so today, trust his plan and take your faith in him. I hope today he will bless you as you trust him, and that you'll grow in those blessings. As you are growing, I hope you take them and bless others around you.
That's today's Devo on Deep Treks. No matter how deep the questions or dark the doubts, there's always a path forward. Reach out at deeptreks.com with prayer needs or topics you'd like us to explore. Keep trekking, Renewal is never far away. Be blessed on the journey and bless others along the way.